An extraordinary thing happened this week, and I didn't note it. I want to note it now. SpaceX, the company that is run by Elon Musk, launched a large rocket, a booster rocket, with a satellite on top of it. And then, after the launch was done and the satellite had left, the booster rocket began to return to Earth, and Musk caught it. The great space arms reached out and grabbed the rocket. So we have a reusable large rocket. Never been done before in my wildest dreams. I'm 68 years old. I would never have thought it was possible. It is an extraordinary scientific and engineering achievement. So extraordinary that on Monday night, we had a group of friends over for dinner as we're getting ready to leave Maine. And we kept just showing the video. And one of the fellas, Two Speeds Tony, Commercial Real Estate, is a mechanical engineer. And he just marveled at this. We all marveled at it. It's an extraordinary thing. SpaceX is an extraordinary thing. Elon Musk, who I do not know and have not met. I've been lucky enough to sit down at a table with Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel and a few other people from that world. It's not my world. I am far from being scientific. But I am, for the benefit of new listeners, a very good lawyer. For the period 1989 to 2016, I practiced land use law in California. I represented landowners. And I would win. All right, there were a half dozen of us who were really good at this. I thought I was the best, but Rob Thornton at Nossaman and Lindell Marsh and my young colleague Andrew Hartzell, who's not young anymore, we were the best. And I was the most aggressive. I would go anywhere and take on any environmental group because I believe in the Fifth Amendment. I'm driven by the passion of the constitutional rights that I believe are impinged upon by local governments. And it's, by the way, why we have a housing shortage. But I would not go to the Coastal Commission. I wouldn't go there because it's basically a Marxist organization run by Javert. It is run by commissars, or they call themselves commissioners. 12 people who are a law unto themselves under the California Coastal Act of 1972, which was passed by initiative. They guard the 1,000 miles of California coastline. That's what they'll tell you. What they are an overweening group of bureaucratic pirates. So last week, I missed this story until this morning. Last week, the Coastal Commission rejected the plan of SpaceX for more launches from the Federal Air Force Base, Vandenberg, out there. They were rejected. And you know why they were rejected? The commissioners told us why. Let's listen to Commissioner Megan Harmon, cut number 32.
Right now, Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims.
All right, what does that have to do with SpaceX and launches? Nothing. Let's listen to Justin Cummings, California Coastal Commission.
I appreciate the apolitical nature under which you all work, but I do share some concern from the Commissioner Wilson brought up because of the fact that, last year we did see, the owner of Starlink shut down Starlink when one of our allies was going to attack one of our adversaries.
That's not true, by the way. He's not a commissioner. He was just testifying. So left-wing radicals go out and testify to the California Commission all the time. But Len, this is a commissioner, Mike Wilson, cut number 31.
We are talking about SpaceX in this, and I will say, and I just want to put it out there, as a person in this process, in as was mentioned earlier today, we're an appointed body. There's the politics and policy and science. They mix in these spaces. It's real. This company is owned by the richest person in the world with direct control over what could be the most extensive global communication system on the planet. And just last week, that person was speaking about political retribution on a national stage, and it was very glib. But yet he was standing next to a candidate that openly promotes and is working to normalize that language. And we have to push back against that.
All right, so Mike Wilson is a never-Trumper, and he is a commissioner, and he is blissfully unaware that he is doing exactly what he accuses Elon Musk of doing, politicizing things, when he is not supposed to do that. But let's go finally to the chair of the California Coastal Commission, Carol Hart, cut number 34.
But here we're dealing with a company that is the head of which has aggressively injected himself into the presidential race and made it clear what his point of view is. My understanding was that they would be here today on Zoom. I am very concerned that even after meeting with me, expressing my feelings.
Chair?
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. They did participate on Zoom today.
It's not the other
So she's not even aware of what's going on. Look, this is a ridiculous clown car. No one ought to practice before them. But here is what I hope Elon Musk does. What those commissioners did, not the witness. The witness can blather on incorrectly about what Starlink did for Ukraine and didn't do for Ukraine. They can blather on endlessly. Commissioners may not, under the color of state law, violate the civil rights of another American. They are vested with state authority by virtue of their appointment to the California Coastal Commission. When they act against Elon Musk on the basis of his political activity and, most importantly, his political speech, and not only did they do so, we have the receipts. Elon Musk can sue them under 42 U.S.C. 1983. 1983 actions are very common. Very, very common. They are for individual damages. The individuals who acted against Elon Musk on the California Coastal Commission may be able to get the state to pay their defenses, but they can't get the state to pay their judgment. Because the judgment is against the individual for individually violating an other individual's civil rights. And Elon Musk ought to gather up the best trial lawyers in California. I'm not a trial lawyer, I'm a land use lawyer. I would not practice before the California Coastal Commission because they're nuts. I mean, they are really crazy. My left-wing brother-in-law, and I love him, he's a liberal, he worked for years for the Port of San Diego. They worked for years to develop a hotel to help the city of San Diego generate downtown business for years. And they worked with the Coastal Commission. They took it out there. And then the Coastal Commission was feeling, a little bit churlish that day. They turned it down because there wasn't enough green grass in front of the hotel. That's the kind of horror story you heard. And I just told my clients, look, I'll take on anything. Delhi Sands flower-loving fly, which is a particularly difficult endangered species. You want to go after the spotted owl, I'm happy. Any kind of San Diego, there's like Stevens kangaroo rat. There are a bunch of different kangaroo rats. You want to deal with the California gnatcatcher, I'm your man. I did that for almost 30 years. And I was good at it. I won. I know the law. I am not intimidated by biologists and bureaucrats of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the Army Corps of Engineers or EPA. I won. I wouldn't go near the Coastal Commission because it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. And this is the most insane. SpaceX is our future. SpaceX is everything that America is and embodies. SpaceX is doing things that I grew up wondering at in 3rd and 4th grade when they would send the Apollo astronauts into space and you would always hold your breath with the rocket blow up because we remember that. And now Elon Musk is catching rockets. And meanwhile, we've got 12 commissioners who, if they were on Jeopardy, wouldn't win $100. They'd all be in negative. 12 commissioners telling Elon Musk. They could no more understand Elon Musk than I could understand a Mandarin Chinese-speaking bureaucrat from a remote province. They are from different worlds. But if anybody knows Elon Musk, go and tell them. Sue every one of them in their individual capacity. Don't sue the commission, sue the commissioners for violating your civil rights, for taking into account your political activities and your speech and deciding that they don't want you to fly rockets from Vandenberg Air Force Base. It's a national security nightmare. It is a disaster for the California economy, for the workers and shareholders in Star X. It's not a disaster for Elon Musk. He can't hurt a millionaire, but it hurts the country because we have commissars and not commissioners on the California Coastal Commission, and this kind of nonsense has to end. At the latest outrage from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Tony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan threatening Israel with a cutoff of their arms. I'll talk about it with Matt after the break. Let me do the morning market check brought to you by our friends at American Federal Gold and Bullion, AmericanFederal.com, AmFed Gold and Bullion. But if you want their website, AmericanFederal.com, their phone number is 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694. Yesterday was a bad day for the markets, all right, and a very good day for gold. Why is that? The Dow was down almost 0.75 of a percentage point, ditto on the S&P, and the Nasdaq dropped more than 1%. Why is that? Why did gold go up to $2,695 an ounce yesterday? If you follow politics as closely as I did, you saw a couple of stories yesterday, I believe fake stories, but stories, indicating momentum for Kamala Harris, that she got her mojo back. It's absolute nonsense. She's on Charlemagne the God. That's not what you do if you're winning in the last 3 weeks of an election. Continetti the God will be along to explain that later, but it's not what you do. She's doing desperate things. Tonight at 5 p.m., she tapes, but it airs at 6 p.m., an interview with Brett Baer. So she's desperate. My only prediction about that is she will at least challenge Trump to a debate on Fox 3 times. That's why she's doing it. She's going on to try and call Donald Trump crazy and try and get him to debate because her internals must be awful. But yesterday there was this gentle breeze of good news for Kamala Harris on the left. The left talked themselves into it. And I think as a result, investors who read the same things I do began to hedge their bets and they bought more gold. Now, remember, American Federal is an agnostic. They buy and sell gold. They'll sell you gold if you think it's going to go to the moon because Kamala Harris is going to win. Or they'll buy your gold right now if you think it's going to fall when Donald Trump gets elected. I don't have a prediction either way. I don't know which way gold is going. I don't know whether you should buy or sell. I just know if you're going to buy or sell, do it with Nick and his team because you can trust them. Straightforward, honest, in the business for 40 years. I begged them to become my sponsor. I've had gold sponsors forever. Almost every broadcast outlet does. And I wanted someone who does just the facts, ma'am. Joe Gannon. Just the facts, ma'am. Here's what gold costs. Here's what our commission is, depending on how much you buy. Here's how much we'll pay. This is what our commission is. Very transparent. Get them the cash. They'll send you the gold. Get them the gold. They'll send you the cash. And trustworthy. Never been sued. I sat down with Nick in last year to go over all my requirements to be a sponsor. And he's a fabulous guy. 1-800-221-7694. Matt Continetti is senior head of domestic policy studies. He's laughing, but I heard the commentary podcast yesterday, and I've just got to call him Continetti the God now. He is also a commentary podcast contributor, a commentary columnist, a Washington Free Beacon columnist, author of the book The Right, An Intellectual History of the Right in America, and a generally good guy. Continetti the God, did you listen to Charlemagne the God host Kamala Harris yesterday?
I listened to a few clips to you, and of course, I think the main story coming out of the interview is Harris's suggestion that she is ready and willing to study reparations for slavery. And I expect the Trump campaign to amplify her comments on that subject through Election Day.
The Kreskin, otherwise known as Abe Greenwald, who was right that interviews are her kryptonite, she did it again. She got near an interview and she said reparations, that's fine. But generally the most important part was the caller, Bobby, who I want to play for you right now because Bobby called the Breakfast Club yesterday, and here's what he said, cut number 16.
Hi, I'm Bobby from Georgia, and I have a question for Kamala Harris. Could you please respond to Trump's claim that he's going to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to round up immigrants if he wins the election? This law was last used to put Asian Americans in internment camps during World War II, and I have a sneaking suspicion that if Trump wins, he's going to use this law to put anyone that doesn't look white in camps, and I'm scared.
Yeah, so you've hit on a really important point and expressed it, I think, so well, which is he is achieving his intended effect to make you scared.
All right, Matt. Bobby from Georgia is nuts. So what ought Kamala Harris to have said to Bobby from Georgia when he suggested that non-white people are going into camps under some law that was actually not used during Korematsu, and Korematsu, which has been repealed by the Supreme Court and explicitly denounced for being bad law at the time? What ought she to have said?
Well, she ought to have said that there's no evidence that Trump is going to do that. And she also could have said that it's time to take a step back and lower the temperature as we approach Election Day, now less than 3 weeks away, Hugh. You know, Bobby's suspicion is widespread. You look at some of the comments coming out of liberals in these final weeks of the election, and they're terrifying what they're saying. James Carville, the Democratic strategist, actually said that Donald Trump has booked Madison Square Garden for an end of election rally in homage or in a historical echo of the Nazi Bund rally there in 1939. It's insanity. I mean, we all know why Trump wants Madison Square Garden. It's a huge venue. He's from New York, and Trump has been obsessed for 10 years with winning New York State in the election. I mean, the type of paranoia you're beginning to see on the left is really striking, and I think it's several levels more deranged than even the first go-round with Trump derangement syndrome in 2016.
We now also have Elon Musk derangement syndrome. I began the show by playing audio of the California Coastal Commission, where they said the quiet part out loud. They won't permit SpaceX launches from Vandenberg because they don't like Elon Musk's politics. And they said it again and again and again. That's so unconstitutional, I can't even begin to tell you. Charles C.W. Cook would know that. You would know that. But you know 42 U.S.C. 1983 exists to punish people who, under color of state law, infringe civil rights. They did that, but it was like a merry-go-round of constitutional wrongs. Do you think this is a mind virus that is spreading?
Well, in Elon Musk's case, Hugh, it's worse than a mind virus. It's an actual concerted effort, I think, on the part of the federal government to target Musk and his companies. I think almost every single one of Musk's companies is now under some sort of federal regulation or investigation or action. The exception might be the Boring Company, the one that does the tunnels. And when you contrast that behavior on part of our government with what Musk continues to do in the realm of engineering, I mean, it's just staggering. It's the idea that here's Elon Musk, who was able to have a rocket land and be caught by these robot arms in what's called the chopsticks maneuver. Some of the most incredible images and accomplishments in the history of humankind. And then I read the next day in the New York Times describing Musk on the stump with Trump, and the New York Times calls Musk a frenzied billionaire. I think he's a whole lot more than that. And I think many American voters, especially male voters, really like Elon Musk and listen to him in all areas, including politics.
He's a genius. No, he's not my kind of genius. I almost flunked high school physics, but he's a genius. And here's what I would do. I wouldn't put him in charge of government efficiency. I'd put him in charge of DARPA. And I'd say, go find things that can blow up anything, anywhere, at any time, and tell our enemies about it. Matt, I got to switch over to Israel because commentary is where I go to hear serious conversation about American-Israeli politics. Headline number one, White House says no hostage talks taking place, blames Sinwar. Good. Israel said to decide on targets it could strike in Iran in a matter of time. Now a matter of time. Good. Israel said demining along Golan frontier, signaling operation against Hezbollah could widen. Good. IDF strikes Beirut for first time in days amid U.S. concerns over bombing campaign. Good. 11 soldiers have died. IDF soldiers have died in Lebanon. And Lebanon, Hezbollah launched a lethal attack by drone against an Israeli Air Force base over the weekend. Here's the bad news. U.S. gives Israel 30 days to address Gaza aid crisis, threatens to curb weapons supply. What do you think of that last story, Matt Continetti?
I don't think much of it, Hugh. I'm outraged at this story. I think it's another example of politics dictating policy. Let's not forget that Kamala Harris has not led in a poll in the state of Michigan this month, the month of October. And Democrats are very worried about Michigan, along with the other two Rust Belt states. And it seems clear to me that Harris and the Democrats' response to this concern has been to pressure Israel in an attempt to win over Arab American and Muslim voters in Michigan. And so I see politics behind this demand on the part of the U.S. government. I think it's a foolish policy. I think it's going to lead to perverse outcomes. We've seen again and again that whenever this administration pressures Israel, Hamas is emboldened. And let's not forget, Hamas is still in the Gaza Strip. Hamas is the group that will steal whatever food aid goes into the Gaza Strip. And by the way, the Gazans are eating. they're having the humanitarian aid continues to go into the Gaza Strip. And so we see yet again this administration falling for a Hamas disinformation play, playing into the hands of this terrorist group. Also, this administration protecting the Iranian nuclear program, protecting the Iranian regime, which depends on those oil assets, which now, thanks to American pressure, Israel says it won't target in its reprisal against this unprovoked act of aggression from Iran, the second ballistic missile attack from Iran on Israel in the past 6 months. This administration's legacy in the Middle East is shameful, in my view.
Matt, I'm not sure that Israel has agreed to that. It's been leaked by American officials that they've agreed. But I don't believe anything that American officials say Netanyahu or Gallant have said. I just don't believe them. I think they try and maneuver Israel into rhetorical corners by doing that. Now, here's the question. Former President Trump was my guest 10 days ago. I asked him, and I hope Brett will ask Kamala, but Brett is a professional. He'll come up with his own question set. Does Israel have the right to retaliate against Iran? Said, I hope so. They have a free shot, right? And, that's the kind of candor I love. Yes, absolutely. Do you think Brett will ask, and what will Kamala say about attacking Iran?
I think Brett will ask a question like that, Hugh. I think Harris will probably respond by saying that she grew up in a middle-class family, which is her first sentence to any question she's asked. Once she gets past the fact that she grew up in a middle-class home, she'll give some boilerplate answer saying that she doesn't think escalation is the way to resolve what's happening in the Middle East. And then she'll pivot and she'll talk about the need for a ceasefire in Gaza in order to release the hostages. It seems to me that Kamala Harris's talking points on the Middle East are weeks behind the actual flow of events there in the region. And as you said while you were reading those headlines, Hugh, government officials acknowledge that there's no hostage deal to be had with Hamas at this point. Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, will hold on to those hostages. The hostages will have to be rescued. They're not going to come home based on a negotiation. Yet that's not reflected in Harris's rhetoric. It's not reflected in Tim Walz's rhetoric. And I expect that Brett will politely push back if that's the answer he receives. And this is why the special report interview is so important. Harris has really encountered only one interviewer, Bill Whitaker of 60 Minutes, who really kind of questioned and kind of dug in and kind of said, okay, well, what's the second order, third order question based on your response, Madam Vice President? Now, Harris will have to face that with Bret Baier. He's a trusted anchor, trusted reporter. And I think a lot of people are going to be watching to see how Harris deals with Brett's questions. I could give her some credit for showing up. I will say that. This Biden hasn't done it while he's been president. This is the first time Harris has done it since she's been vice president. But this is going to be, I think, a highly scrutinized event, and we'll see if it makes any big difference. However, based on her record in interviews so far, I think there's a lot of peril for her to sit down for this meeting today.
I talked to Trump for 27 minutes. Brett gets Harris for 30. I had 14 questions. How many questions do you think he'll get in with the filibuster or the vice filibuster in chief? Because she's not as good as Obama.
Yeah, maybe half that. I think he'll order them well, though. I think he'll have a sense of what he wants to talk about. And what we've seen from Harris, though, is she's not going to want to get into details. Um, in fact, at that town hall with Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club yesterday, she was asked, well, what do you say to people who accuse you of only sticking with talking points? And Harris said, I say you're welcome, as though that's a great achievement, to only be on the talking points. I don't think she'll have the same situation when she sits down with Bret Baier.
Matt, I'm Irish, so I always assume there will be a bad ending. I always assume that it's going to go wrong and sideways at the end. That's our way. What do you think of the state of the election right now? And if it were held today, who would win?
If the election were held today, Hugh, I think we'd have a 50-50 race. And I think Harris has a slight edge in the Rust Belt states. And when I say slight, I mean under 1%. I mean potentially hundreds of votes separating the winner and loser in those critical states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so I think she still has a slight advantage in this election, but it's extremely slight, and Trump is closing. And we've known in the past that Trump closes very well in 16 and in 20. So even though I say that for the election today, I see Trump having momentum in these last weeks.
Do you know what my nightmare scenario is, Matt? Is that we have, by whatever hook or crook, essentially an election that comes down to North Carolina and to the votes of the mountain regions impacted by Helene that we cannot get to, and we cannot find out if they voted, and we can't find their votes. It's worse than Florida 2000, because at least in Florida 2000, you could drive from polling place to polling place, and you could watch the hanging chads being counted. If it's up in the mountains where we're doing our fundraising drive for Food for the Poor, because they're just shattered, that would be a nightmare for the country. Agree?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree. I would say that there's a chance, though, that that scenario won't happen, Hugh, simply because in recent days, Trump's lead in North Carolina, I think, has solidified in some of the polling I'm seeing. Trump's doing very well right now in the Sun Belt states, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. The real question is he going to be able to get over the finish line ahead of Harris in the Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania? Right now, Michigan is looking the best of the three. Pennsylvania, of course, has been tied for weeks. And you expect that a tie like that in a state like Pennsylvania, maybe you give a slight edge to Trump. So as I say, it's extremely tight. I think that Trump may have a little bit of an advantage in the final weeks. And I think if the nightmare scenarios come, I agree that North Carolina is scary, but I see something in Pennsylvania as kind of more likely, simply because Pennsylvania has not fixed its vote count issues. And this is a huge
Matt,
problem.
one last comment, one last question. I grew up 7 miles from Sharon, Pennsylvania. I know Western Pennsylvania. We would play Western Pennsylvania football teams at John F. Kennedy High School. We would go back and forth. I know Western Pennsylvania. I don't know Philly. It's a big state, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. Here's my last question, and I need a spontaneous response from you. I think Harris and Walz is the worst ticket ever nominated by a major party in my lifetime, including McGovern-Eagleton. What do you think?
My lifetime's shorter than yours, Hugh, but I think that only means
by about
that
half.
It's more likely. That's more likely to be the case that this is the worst ticket. Absolutely. Combined when you think of lack of experience, lack of knowledge, lack of fluency in the issue, when you have the vice president who literally says, I'm a knucklehead every time he's challenged on his habitual lying and deceit. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty pretty bad ticket. Any ticket that says we're the knucklehead ticket, I don't know how people can rationalize wanting to put them in charge of this nation's very pressing and urgent public crises.
I'm joined by Mary Catherine Ham, host of Getting Hammered, and a brand new podcast that's soon to be released, Getting Hebrew Hammered. I listened last week to Getting Hebrew Hammered, and the allusion to, I think it's a great idea, Mary Catherine. When does Getting Hebrew Hammered drop?
We were talking about how sometimes Vic and I, a Catholic and a Protestant, need help with our Jewish references. Although we have great love for the Jewish people in the state of Israel, sometimes we just get our terms mixed up. So we were like, do we need a lifeline to just call Bethany Mandel when necessary? So we're working on that.
Well, I want the same lifeline because I listen to Dan Senor in commentary, and they lapse into Yiddish as though we're not there. And I feel like saying, I'm right here. What the heck are you talking about? I have no idea what you're doing. Let me get very serious very quickly, Mary Catherine. I have been sponsoring, and Food for the Poor has been sponsoring a campaign to bring relief to the hurricane-impacted people of Florida, northern Georgia, eastern Tennessee, and especially the mountains of California. And now Florida is pretty much fixed, but I asked Food for the Poor to keep the banner up at HughHewitt.com for another couple of weeks because I don't think North Carolina is fixed yet. What, you being a North Carolinian, what do you understand the western part of the state to be like right now?
Yeah, it's definitely not fixed. I mean, places like Chimney Rock are just wiped out. No streets exist, right? So this is a very tough situation to get people into. Samaritan's Purse, I have friends who are out there working with them doing, they got church groups round the clock out there just cleaning up and trying to get people to a place where they can have contractors in or any kind of help to actually fix their homes. There are still, I believe, 90-something people missing. Obviously, that is a recovery, not a rescue mission at this point in all likelihood, which is just terrible. And it's a very tragic situation that people move on from very quickly because we have this news cycle. I would note Nancy Rommelman at Nancy Rom, R-O-M-M on Twitter is down in Asheville and Chimney Rock reporting this week. So she will have some insights. But even at the airport in Asheville, there's a boil water advisory inside the airport on the waterfront.
Wow.
Like life is not normal in Western North Carolina.
Tell me her name again. Nancy Rom, at Nancy Rom on X.
At Nancy Rom, R-O-M-M. I'm actually staying at her place in New York while she's out.
Well, good choice. I'd let her get down to Asheville. Here's my nightmare scenario, Mary Catherine. The election comes down to the way that North Carolina goes, and we can't find the votes in Western North Carolina. Now, it happens to be both blue and red out there. Asheville's very blue. The mountains are very red. What do you think of that possibility?
I think that things are in pretty bad shape out there and that probably voting is not top of mind for many of the people who are involved in cleanup and just desperately trying to cut through giant trees to get on with their lives, right? Greg Biffle can only do so much. And there have been so many people on the ground. And at this point, the federal government is in there. They were later to the game than civilians and other groups, and especially FEMA. But there's people on the ground helping. But I do think there's probably room for one of the voting nonprofits, right or left leaning or what have you, to be out there making sure that people do get to exercise this right, because it's going to be more complicated. I think that North Carolina legislature allowed a few tweaks to when you can drop off absentee ballots or do early voting in Western North Carolina to sort of accommodate this. But yes, there's probably some room to do some real help on the ground out there.
There were tweaks. I would like to see them extend voting 30 days and do a Georgia style. 30 days later, you can get your vote in, and we'll just suspend North Carolina. Maybe it won't matter. Maybe it will matter. But I don't like the idea of either a lefty or a righty not being able to vote because their polling station is gone. Mary Catherine, I want to turn to Charlemagne the God yesterday. Can I play Bobby, please, for Mary Catherine? This is the craziest thing. Whatever cut
Hi,
that Bobby
I'm Bobby from Georgia, and I have a question for Kamala Harris. Could you please respond to Trump's claim that he's going to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to round up immigrants if he wins the election? This law was last used to put Asian Americans in internment camps during World War II, and I have a sneaking suspicion that if Trump wins, he's going to use this law to put anyone that doesn't look white in camps, and I'm scared.
Okay, so this is nuts. What do you, and she responded, you should be scared. What do you think of that, Mary Catherine? Why would they let that nut on the air?
Well, yeah, are they screening those questions or not? I don't know if they're just taking questions, but her answer was very affirming to this person. Like, you've gotten the correct message. And it's so much projection. By the way, I generally like Charlemagne. I think he's a more interesting thinker than like 90% of mainstream journalists. And even though he has a professed side, he often can push, but he was pretty soft on her yesterday. And this is a moment where he just like sort of nods along with this guy. I think this is such projection. They are creating fear here. Like, the guy's scared because of the messages you are sending, and you're backing him up on this insane claim.
I have now been referring Mary Catherine Ham to Continenty as the God at his request on Commentary Podcast yesterday. Do you have a preferred moniker?
You know what? Since I have Ham and everything is branded that way, I don't really want to branch out. I mean, the Hammer's pretty good. Hammer Time is pretty good. Like, I feel like I've already got it. I know that
Vic is now Vic the Tofu Eater because of your last episode. Vic is the Tofu Eater. And I've been known as Wave Master since I got to California at the age of 21. So I've got mine already. Everyone needs a new nickname after Charlemagne the God. Let me talk to you about something you mentioned in passing in the last Getting Hammered. You said you have unusual views of nutrition. That piqued my curiosity, as I do as well. What are your unusual views of nutrition?
Well, I would say that there's sort of, maybe what is the term, is maybe anti-establishment, in that I think the nutritional establishment and the federal government in particular have been wrong about nutrition for ages. I think that fat is good for you. I think that sodium's not a problem unless you're already hypertensive. I think that the whole low fat, which ended up being a high carb phase where we just stuffed everything with extra sugar to make it taste better, was actually very bad for you. You should eat as many whole foods as possible. And try to stay away from processed. By the way, I still eat Bojangles and Waffle House. Like, I'm not ashamed. It's about balance. But I'm also like a statin truther and some cholesterol stuff that I think is kind of bunk.
Okay, what do you think about sushi?
Oh, I love sushi. I know.
You see, in Ohio, we call it bait. We call it bait. I have a gag reflex. So I want to run by you a situation and tell me how you would have handled it. I was asked by a very well-off individual to come have dinner with them, and I was asked if I had food restrictions, to which I answered no, because I can get through most courses even if I don't like it. Well, it turns out it was 7 courses of sushi by a private sushi chef. I didn't even know how to eat it, Mary Catherine. I had to sit there with my hands in the lap waiting for people to show me how to eat it. And I'm unembarrassed by this because I'm too old to be embarrassed by my food choices. But I hate sushi. I can't get it down. It's like the lima beans of the sea. What do you think? Do you think that sushi is responsible for many deaths that go unreported in the United States? I do.
I don't know about that, Hugh. I do think food poisoning, obviously from raw foods, is a greater chance than other things. Oysters can be particularly problematic. That is one thing I do avoid while pregnant. I do not avoid sushi while pregnant. I definitely, with my second kid, ate all the sushi. And now I'm just jealous that you didn't call me in. Let me be your pinch hitter for a 7-course sushi meal.
I felt so bad because it was obviously an elaborate presentation for my benefit. There were only 4 people for dinner. It was a great conversation with a really smart person who you would like to know about. But I must say, next time someone asks me if I have food restrictions, I say, I'm not going to allergic to anything, but please don't serve sushi. I now have learned to say that. Is there anything Mary Catherine Ham says, please don't serve X?
No, I'm actually quite adventurous. I'll pretty much try anything once. And I have I would say I have a broad, I can go high, I can go low. I'm pretty flexible on food.
Do any of the 4 Hammer children exhibit an Ohioan's distaste for the exotic?
Yes, I would say 2 of 4 seem a little standard kid food picky, and the other two are willing to try like parent food and adult food. So we got a 50% situation, but we do also encourage even the picky ones to have their normal dinner, because sometimes mom just cooked one dinner and that's all there is to it.
Now, I want to tell you about my last notice to Steve. I have stayed in Maine because this past weekend was the North American Wife Carrying Championship held at Sunday River, as it is every year in the state of Maine, a ski resort a couple hours from the coast. And the North American Wife Carrying Championship, which you can see there on your screen, involves about a 280-yard obstacle course where the husband must carry the wife. The prize for the North American Wife Carrying Championship is $500 plus the wife's weight in beer. Do you think you and Steve are up for this?
I absolutely think we are up for it, although I don't think we're the best combo, because really you want a very strong large man and a petite woman. We have a very strong large man and a strong, dense woman, right? I'm just like not the lightest package in the world. So he's going to have some more trouble, but he's in very good shape. I wish I could help more. I feel like although I guess our beer would be larger because I weigh more. So
Your beer, you would win more beer. They have a teeter-totter at the end, and they just keep stacking beer until it evens out. But the key is the wife has to keep their ankles very tightly locked, even when the husband goes down in the mud. I think you'd be very good at this, Mary Catherine. You and Steve, you're welcome to stay with our friends and family. Take a look at this.
I think
this is
if we have a chance to be champions, I'm there for it. I think we could pull it off.
It's the North American Championship. Have you ever been the North American champion of anything?
I don't think I have, but I'm looking forward to it. We'll start training.
All right, we'll send you the details. Mary Catherine Ham of Getting Hammered fame, thank you for joining me. What's the new podcast, Mary Catherine?
It is called Normally, and that's with Carol Markowitz, who is a New York Post writer who we all know and love.
I have to go get Normally, and I will send you Father, Daughter, Grandchildren, the new podcast that we are starting with my daughter when we ever get around to it, but we're both procrastinators. Yeah, would your dad ever sit down with us on Father, Daughter, Grandkids? Because she and I have very different views of child raising. Do you have very different views with your father?
I don't think we have that dissimilar views, actually. But it's funny because I feel like your daughter and I line up pretty well on child rearing. So maybe my dad and your daughter have similar views, because maybe we're all on the same page.
Well, you're very free range and my daughter's very free range, and I don't want them to go to the playground. All right, so I'm very risk averse grandparent. I don't know if your dad's a risk averse grandparent, is he?
So I don't think my dad is risk averse. My mom is a little bit, and she finds it funny because she wasn't with us. I mean, we were very rough and tumble kids. She had two boys and me, and we were really in the dirt and climbing things and all that kind of stuff. But with her grandkids, she's just less practiced at letting them do what they need to do. And so she finds herself hovering more than she did as a mom.
Guardians are down 2-0 in the World Series, but I am not alarmed. I am not alarmed. We will rally. I'm sure Akash Chogali from Americans for Prosperity agrees with me. You are a Guardians fan, are you not, Akash? Or we can end this interview now.
I am a Red Sox fan, which makes me not a Yankees fan, Hugh.
Okay, you're on our team.
We will leave it. Yeah, I will leave it at that.
Yeah, you're on our team. Akash, I began the show with a Los Angeles Times article, and this is a bumper shot, so bear with me. California Coastal Commission is the worst agency in America. The most overbearing, the least responsive, the least constitutional, the most aggressively anti-property rights agency in America. They have told Elon Musk he cannot fire as many SpaceX rockets as he wants. And the reasons they cited were his political views. What do you think Americans for Prosperity think? Are they familiar with this story? Just happened last week. And if so, what does Americans for Prosperity think about that?
Hugh, this is something we are all too familiar with at Americans for Prosperity, specifically with the state of California. As you might recall, when Kamala Harris was Attorney General, she sued Americans for Prosperity Foundation in California to try to force us to reveal the lists of our donors, which is constitutionally protected. Donor privacy is a constitutionally protected right because of NAACP versus Alabama. It was very clear the state of California was going after us because of our political leanings and our limited government ideology. Look, this seems no different. It's the California government going after someone, inhibiting their rights because they don't like their politics. It's absolutely shameful, has no place in America.
Let me play for you the chairman of the California Coastal Commission. Her name is Carol Hart, Caryl Hart, talking last week about why Musk would be shut down in the number of his launches, cut number 34.
But here we're dealing with a company that is the head of which has aggressively injected himself into the presidential race and made it clear what his point of view is. My understanding was that they would be here today on Zoom. I am very concerned that even after meeting with me, expressing my feelings.
Chair.
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. They did participate on Zoom today.
It's not the other companies. This is about SpaceX increasing their launches, not the other companies increasing their launches.
So, Akash, she's wrong about him not being there. She's wrong about the constitutional issues, and she's explicit that she's singling out SpaceX. Do you think Elon should sue her in her individual capacity under 42 U.S.C. 1983?
I think it's certainly worth considering. Look, he's obviously shown a willingness to do this kind of thing against government agencies. As you know, they are suing the National Labor Relations Board, which is also, in my opinion, an unconstitutional agency with their administrative law judges and all this kind of stuff, how they litigate labor law cases. But there seems to be a concerning trend here of theoretically impartial government agencies going after employers with conservative limited government leanings. I mean, that is the stuff of, historically, some of these Marxist, socialist, totalitarian states. I mean, it should be terrifying to any American who even somewhat believes in free markets, free enterprise, and the concept of private companies. Government's job is to create a neutral and level playing field, not to pick winners and losers based on their political preferences, and certainly not to use the authority of the state to go after companies because of the political leanings of their CEO, let alone what the other thousands and thousands and thousands of people who work at SpaceX think about politics. I'm sure many of them don't care about politics, and now they are being punished by these California bureaucrats.
The chairman of the Federal Trade Commission is sort of like the Coastal Commission East. Lena Khan is a 35-year-old former Yale law professor who wrote one article, and Barack Obama, I think, first credentialed her, and then Joe Biden put her on the Federal Trade Commission, and now she's the chairman, and she's trying to destroy Amazon. What is wrong with these people, Akash? They do not seem to understand anything about economics.
I'm so glad you asked. This is something that is so important for conservatives, Hugh, because there are some people on the right who have actually applauded what she's doing because they don't like some of these big companies, tech companies. You don't like the politics of the tech company. Government has no business trying to break up these companies or stop these mergers. The standard for the FTC is very clear. It's called the Consumer Welfare Standard. If there's a risk that it is harming consumers, then the FTC may have an authority to step in, investigate, take action. That is obviously not the case with something like Amazon. People absolutely love Amazon. You can go on your phone, order something at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's there at 8 a.m. That's exactly the kind of service, if Lena Khan had her way with Amazon, would cease to exist. Amazon itself would probably cease to exist if she had her way. That is terrible governance. It's terrible for the American people. And quite honestly, Hugh, it should be very concerning that there are some who call themselves conservatives applauding that kind of stuff. Really should have no place in our movement, let alone in our country.
Now, Akash, the Federal Trade Commission was brought into being by federal statute 100 years ago this month. It has been amended a couple of times, I think most recently in the 90s. It was never amended to authorize Lena to go after on the basis of artificial intelligence or consumer delivery schedules, Amazon or Google or any of the other big tech companies. She's basically out there riding like the Mongol horde through big tech land. And I'm all in favor of studying what to do about big tech, but does this show up on your issue set when you're knocking on doors?
Hugh, absolutely not. The American people are not concerned about this. And I think this is such a key point. I try to make a lot inside the Beltway to other conservatives who, again, are sort of looking at Lena Khan fawningly. American voters, in particular conservatives, who some of these folks claim to speak on behalf of, they have absolutely zero concern about this. They like a lot of what these companies do. Now, are they concerned about social media censorship and big tech conceptually? A little bit, yes. Is it anywhere near the top of their concerns? Absolutely not. Their concerns are affordability, the economy, jobs, border security. I think some of the cultural rot in this country shows up every now and then, but the idea that government can step in and bureaucrats can start breaking up tech companies and that's going to save America is absolutely nowhere to be found in the Republican voter base. It's something that Republican lawmakers should see very clearly is not a top tier issue. It's not conservative and it won't solve any problems at all.
Okay, let's dial in on the blue wall, Akash. I know you're working hard, and anyone can go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer, americansforprosperity.org/volunteer to get in on the actual grassroots work. You can make phone calls from wherever you are. You can walk precincts if you're in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan. How do you feel about those three states, Akash?
Hugh, these states are as close as they have been in an election in my lifetime. These are an absolute toss-up. I think, frankly, there's some overconfidence on both sides, and I think it's unfounded. This is going to be a toss-up. You know the old adage is going to come down to turnout, but what that actually means is it's going to come down to operations, the campaigns themselves, outside organizations, their ability not only to mobilize their base, but there's a very, very tiny, tiny sliver of swing voters left in this country in these states, Hugh. And getting those folks onto your side. I'll give you one very quick example. The kind of thing that could do it for Republicans. I just wrote about this in National Review. The Trump tax cuts are expiring next year. Those individual tax cuts are going to have to be dealt with. Kamala Harris has pledged to let those tax cuts expire, raising taxes on more than 2/3 of all American households. We just put out a poll. Working class voters, non-college voters, Hispanic voters, they like those tax cuts, want to keep those tax cuts, would see it as a tax increase if they're allowed to expire. That's a winning message for Republicans that wins in the suburbs, wins with working class voters, can get them over the hump in a very, very narrow election in those blue wall states. I think making a prediction one way or another at this point is unfounded.
I agree with the latter, and I agree that everybody listening ought to tell everyone who they know that the tax rates they enjoy currently are going to skyrocket if Kamala Harris is elected. Akash Chougule is exactly right. Once again, americansforprosperity.org/volunteer if you want to get involved, americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Akash, I look forward to talking to you next week. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm coming right back, except over to HughHewitt.com. Please be as generous as you can. Food for the Poor is now, they've taken care of almost everyone in Florida. They're now sending every truck they can to North Carolina, where the suffering remains extraordinary in the mountains, and Food for the Poor is going there and dropping off relief supplies. All you have to do is go to HughHewitt.com and find that banner at the top. You cannot miss it, not even if you're a Steelers fan. You can find the emergency relief supplies banner, whether it's $10, $100, or $1,000. We appreciate it. It goes to delivering aid to Americans who need it desperately. Thank you for your generosity. I am not easily angered. I am not easily surprised. I am rarely so upset that I carry something from one day to the next. But yesterday after the show, a clip kept playing in my head that Generalissimo had given to me. And I want to play it again to you, and I want to tell you why. I went for a 3.5-hour rumble yesterday. I want you to hear it before I tell you why it upset me so much. It's Kamala Harris making an Indigenous Persons Day statement on Columbus Day earlier this week, cut number 11.
Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
The United States, when it was the British Empire, did not usher in a wave of devastation for the native peoples. Ushering in suggests it was the intention of the Pilgrims and of the settlers of the Virginia coast and of the early settlements from the north of Maine all the way down to South Carolina to destroy and wreak havoc upon the Native Americans. It is true that the consequences of the settlement of the United States have been extraordinary and remarkable and have freed people around the globe for 250 years. It's almost 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. For 250 years, we have been marching forward to lead the West towards a period of great prosperity and peace, to defend oppressed peoples, and to bring freedom and light where necessary, most obviously in World War II and in World War I, but throughout the world when we have stood up for human rights, when we stand up today for Jimmy Lai in a jail in Hong Kong because of Xi Jinping. It is also true that Native Americans were wrongly dealt with, often to their ultimate demise, often forced onto reservations to which they did not want to go, and often unable to escape those reservations because the Bureau of Indian Affairs and subsequent agencies were ill-equipped to deal with the peoples who were here in the United States when European settlement began. But the idea that we devastated the continent and that we devastated the people by intention, that it was our intention to do that, is a deeply insidious libel on Americans. It's a libel on colonists. America mostly has meant, as it has meant for my family, a place to which they could flee from when they had absolutely no opportunity. I have told you before, my great-grandfather, James, came to this country from Ulster, Ireland, as a Scotch Presbyterian with nothing. And he lied at Ellis Island and said he was from Scotland because the Irish were discriminated against, even if they were Orange Irish. And he went to work in a coal mine. And from the coal mine, he bought a farm. And on that farm, he had 8 children, one of whom was my grandfather, who worked the farm until one of his uncles died and left him a little bit of money to go to a law school in Ohio, and he became a small-town lawyer. My wife's father fled Austria in great-grandfather fled Austria in 1848 to come to the United States. He's a Jew, by the way, to go to Indianapolis, open a synagogue, enlist in the Civil War to fight on behalf of the slaves, rose to the rank of brigadier general, went back and practiced law, and her great-grandfather and her grandfather became United States admirals. This country is an amazing country. And on Columbus Day, we ought to have celebrated all of the amazing things that America did, and at the same time say there were many injustices done along the way, including slavery and the devastation to the Indians who were in the North American continent, many of whom waged war upon the settlers, like the Comanches and members of the Sioux tribe. But we ought never to deliver a speech that in any way diminishes the great and good effect of the United States of America. She is a hardcore leftist. I do question the ability of her to ever objectively understand the history of the American people and what we have done for humanity. Kamala Harris, you're not getting my vote ever. I hope you lose 50 states. Michael Waltz is a member of Congress. He has a brand new book out called Hard Truths, which is doing very well, even though it doesn't publish yet. When does it publish, Mike?
Tuesday, the 22nd.
Okay, so a week from this week. I want to bring up a couple of things. First, I want to disclose my son works for Michael Waltz, and I don't normally bring that up because I've done it so often, but we're going to be talking about the book a lot for the next 3 weeks, so I thought I would just say that up front. It's got nothing to do with the book, but I just wanted people to know that. Mike, did you know that Rocky Versace, who's on page 156 of your book, is the subject of an annual honoring in Alexandria, Virginia. Colonel Rui always holds the Friends of Rocky Versace. There's a statue of him outside the Mount Vernon Recreation Center, and that once a year on Veterans Day, we honor Rocky. Did you know that?
I did know that, but I have to admit I've never been able to make the ceremony. I've seen the statue many times. I've always just been somewhere else on Veterans Day, usually down in my district the last 6 years. But what a hero and what an unsung hero, right? I believe the only Puerto Rican to have the Medal of Honor of Puerto Rican nationality, and one of the only to get one for his actions of valor uh, as a POW. And after repeated, as I talk about, after literally weeks, months of torture at the hands of the Vietnamese, he was a Green Beret that was captured. They then refused to break. They were dragging him into the yet another torture session. He was screaming, "God bless America," at the top of his lungs. You want to
I
talk about
found it great.
resilience and lessons learned, right? Go ahead.
I found it great that you put him in the book because a lot of people forget our heroes from the Vietnam era, and he's a very early POW, and he's not one of the POWs who came home. The Viet Cong executed him. And when the colonel introduced me to him, I just thought, what an extraordinary story. So I gather that within the Green Beret community, he is well known and honored, as well as the other people that you talk about throughout the book. There's a Green Beret community of heroes that the Green Berets look up to.
Yeah, that's right. And what I try to talk about, like, Colonel Nick Rowe, also POW, 5 escape attempts until he was finally successful, brutally tortured each time, literally walked from North Vietnam to South Vietnam and finally escaped and refused to get out of the military. Got back in, trained everybody, and was the founder of our survival, escape, resistance, or SEER school, passing on the lessons learned in captivity for teaching us how to resist. And there's just so many stories like that. But it's the unique mindset of the Green Beret, Hugh, that I tried to convey. And if we can build coalitions of militias, murderous warlords, oftentimes allied militaries with just a few Green Berets in the middle of nowhere, valleys of Afghanistan, mountains of Africa, then we can build coalitions in Washington, D.C. To get the job done. Although some days I think the tribes of Afghanistan are a little bit easier than the tribes in the swamp.
Congressman Waltz, as I read this, I think I'm a civilian, but I'm fairly familiar with military stuff. But I couldn't articulate the difference between the SEALs, Recon Marines, the Air Force Special Forces, and Green Berets until I read this book. Do you think most Americans make that same admission that they really can't distinguish between the special operators and their specialties?
I get asked that at every high school forum, every ROTC. It's one of the reasons I wanted to write it, because we truly are unique. Look, the Rangers, the SEALs, they're the best in the world at a gunfight. What they did to Osama bin Laden in terms of 2 bullets in the forehead, middle of the night, other side of the world, and got everybody in and out, mission accomplished. They literally are the best. Green Berets have to learn multiple languages, local cultures. We specialize in regions of the world. We blend in, and we're the ones, rather than sending a battalion of Rangers to seize an airfield or a platoon of SEALs to take out bin Laden, you take 3 or 4 of us and embed us with a tribe, a village. We specialize in guerrilla warfare, counterinsurgency, and we'll train 5,000-10,000 of them to then take care of our nation's business for us. And we call it by, with, and through. You look at what we did in Colombia against the FARC, by, with, and through the Colombians, what we could do against the Mexican cartels, the horse soldiers in the early days of Afghanistan, just one team. Literally less than 50 Americans, multiple Green Beret teams, took out the entire Taliban regime by, with, and through our local allies. That's the difference.
Now, I want to say, we'll cover at length in the next 3 weeks everything that's in the book, but I've already found my favorite part, and I'm not going to mention the elder's name because I can't pronounce it, but the secret weapon of the Afghan elder, who he would not reveal it to you, And your boss has finally said in the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan, unless he tells us what his secret weapon is, we're not going to deal with him because it could be very dangerous. I'm sure they were thinking bioweapon or chemical weapon or something like that.
That's right.
Can you tell that story? Because I found that to be very inspiring, even for the future of Afghanistan, now cloaked in darkness.
Yeah, so I was dealing with a local elder. He had a powerful militia. I wanted him on our side. I had months and months of meetings to try to win him over. He kept talking about his secret weapon. This is how we're going to defeat the extremists, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, all of it. And after a while, my headquarters said, look, if this is some type of stinger or Iranian mine or whatever, no more cash, no more assistance. We got to know. And I finally pinned him down. He says, okay, Commander Mike, fine. I'll show you my secret weapon, how we're going to beat the extremists. And I hear all this rustling in the back. He sends one of his lieutenants. You know what it was, Hugh? What came walking out were his two daughters, uncovered. I'd never seen a woman outside of a burqa in this part of Afghanistan. Proudly, I mean, standing strong. He was sneaking them, smuggling them to India to get trained as a doctor and as a lawyer. He said, it is our powerful women and how we will undermine the extremists. I mean, it was like Malala Yousafzai, who said famously, that the woman who got the Nobel Peace Prize after being shot by the Taliban for trying to go to school, the thing the extremists fear the most is a girl with a book. And when we have women marching in the streets in Islamabad and Tehran and in Kabul, the extremist ideology will be defeated. So this was an illiterate elder. This guy was a quasi warlord, but he understood it was the ideology, the war of ideas that we have to defeat.
Now, Mike, do you think that the memory of freedom for women will percolate in Taliban Afghanistan, that half the population has got to have a memory of when they were able to go to school, when they did not have to wear a burqa? Do you think that will percolate long term, or are the Taliban so evil that they'll just kill everyone who begins to mouth that term?
I think they are so evil they will continue to oppress, but I think that will also eventually lead to massive resistance to their rule. And from the folks that I'm still talking to, that is absolutely happening. And look, at the end of the day, Hugh, women's education is not just a humanitarian issue; it's a national security issue. When girls are educated, women are empowered, the extremists are not. And if you look around the world where that has happened, where women are empowered in civil society and business and politics, the extremists may be present, but they don't dominate and take over. And Afghanistan is a case in point.
Last question for this week, Mike Waltz. The book is Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. This might be part of the answer to our recruitment crisis, because young people like to be challenged. Did you have that in mind when you wrote it, that it might actually get onto the desks of some 16, 17, and 18-year-old men and women in high school and maybe inspire them to think that they could do things like this as well?
Yeah, well, it's one of the things that inspired me to write it. In all my free time as a member of Congress, I was asked repeatedly, junior ROTC events in high schools and others, what is it about what you did as a Green Beret that then how do you apply that to what you're doing in Washington, D.C. and this national conversation? What were those key traits that really got me thinking, inspired me to write the book? And I'm looking forward to giving it to every high schooler out there. If I could do two things, if I could take every high school class to Normandy, where they deeply appreciate the freedoms that they lost at a very young age, and if I could get us back to national service, where young people get off the couch, off the phone, and start learning leadership, discipline, followership, teamwork. And it could be in national parks. It could be in inner city tutoring. It doesn't have to be in uniform. And you do it with fellow Americans who don't look like you, who don't come from the same background. We're missing that forcing function that the greatest generation had, and that I think led to them overcoming. It literally led them to saving the world.
I think Hard Truth is going to be an incredible bestseller. I appreciate getting a copy early, and I will keep talking with you about it for the next 2 weeks. You can pre-order it now so it arrives on your doorstep next week when it publishes. Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. You see Mike Waltz all the time on media because he's one of the key surrogates for former President Trump. But this book has got nothing to do with politics. It's got everything to do with character. Go out and get Hard Truths. Thank you, Congressman Waltz. Olivia Beavers is with Politico.com. Good morning, Olivia. Where do we find you in a car this morning?
Hi, Hugh. It's a combination of bad planning, but I am on my way back from Virginia Beach after traveling with Steve Scalise and some members who were there for a Jen Kiggins event, who's a battleground Virginia Republican. So I'm right in Richmond, and still on my way to DC, but didn't quite make it as far as I had in my mind when I first set out to drive.
Oh, that drive. My grandkids live down in the Norfolk area, and they're military family. And I hate that drive because it can be 3 hours or 6 hours. You never know, really, because there's only one road. So, Olivia, you're with Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson went ballistic on CBS yesterday because they edited his Face the Nation appearance. Tell us about that.
Well, one, knowing Mike Johnson, I have never really heard him do this before to an outlet. He, was upset, I guess, about North Carolina and feeling like his answer about taking care of the storm was taken out. But I think it's more like there's been attacks on the press, but it's just sort of the man himself going after CBS. I haven't seen him do anything like this. He can push back on a story, but this is really him saying he feels like the CBS did not do him justice.
Well, it didn't. And Margaret Brennan, I don't know if it's her fault or if it's her editor's fault. CBS has basically thrown in with Kamala Harris, and they are now openly editing for content. They screwed up the 60 Minutes interview. They released too much. We know that there's a transcript that they won't post. And then they cut off Mike Johnson talking about his personal experience in the mountains. Let's focus on that. You've talked to him about that. What was Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House's personal experience in the North Carolina mountains?
Well, I actually interviewed him a few days before he went to North Carolina, but I know that he was trying to make a very important show of effort that the party was going to be working with the victims of the Hurricane Helene, and that they were going to be trying to get them help. They were going to try to be getting the businesses the help and support that they need. So I know that was something that he was organizing when I was with him just a few days before he traveled to North Carolina. And he wanted to also
he's
make
a
sure
very
he's not
gentle
in the
man.
way.
Do you agree with me? People say he's a gentleman,
I do.
but I think he's a very gentle man. He is not prone to being angry.
No, and I put that in my story because at some points members of Congress will punch at him repeatedly, sort of, criticizing him, and it's very hard to get a reaction. I almost never have seen him yell or get built up, and some of that is scripture for him. Some of that is to live peacefully, even if someone is coming after you with other men. I think it was like Romans 12:18, and so he himself, that has actually worked for him in the conference, but this is a little bit of a feistier, angrier element, seeing him coming after CBS. Very not Mike Johnson I cover.
I think it's a soft word turns away wrath, is Proverbs 15:1. A gentle answer turns away wrath is one thing. That is, to me, it's been my guide on media panels forever, as a soft word turns away wrath. But occasionally I have lost my temper, very famously with Andrew Sullivan on this program. The first time he came back, we've made up since then. I lost my temper with a pornographer back in my PBS days when he was saying children weren't injured by pornography. I very rarely lose my temper, and I think it is a conditioning of Catholic school. Are there other members who have that same restraint, Olivia Beavers?
I think there definitely are members, but I think given that Johnson is the number one, he tends to be the victim of a lot more sort of public criticism. But that actually there's sort of a feeling that because they're punching and they're not getting the punch back, Mike Johnson actually might diffuse the situation versus someone who starts a fight if you know what I mean. Like if someone wants to escalate it, Mike Johnson would be in a much tougher situation trying to, get reelected as speaker or passing various bills. So he almost kind of by nature, given the situation he's in, not be a hothead, but he isn't just sort of out of practice and for knowing him pre-speakership. But there are definitely some members who keep their calm, and there's some who are definitely more willing to jump into a fight depending on what is happening in the Republican conference.
All right, last question, Olivia. How do the Republicans feel about November right now?
Republicans generally feel pretty good, but I will say they, if you're a reporter, you're going to ask them, they're going to say, oh, we're going to win and Trump's going to win. Some of the people more privately will say, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. They think that it's going to be very close. They think it's very competitive. And that's why they're being so intense about their get out the vote efforts.
Yeah, I think it is very close, but I felt the ground move about a week ago, and I believe it's moving towards Trump because Kamala Harris may be the worst candidate ever nominated by a major party ever. And I don't go back to the 18th century, obviously, but in modern times, since FDR, may be the worst in communicating. Olivia Beavers of Politico, always a pleasure. Good to see you. Look forward to reading. Get back. Good luck on the 64 and the 95. No one ever likes that drive. I've been doing this since 1990, and I don't think I have many equals. But there's a new guy in town. It's sort of like the Gunslinger movie. When the old guy says, okay, I can put down my weapon, there's a new sheriff in town. The new sheriff is Scott Jennings, and Scott Jennings works over at CNN. And he's better at this than I am because he doesn't lose his temper as often as I did. Scott Jennings, it is a pleasure to meet you. First time I've ever talked with you.
Yeah, good morning. And you are the legend, and you are the best of all time, and you're the mentor for all of us. So we appreciate you so much, Hugh. Thank you for what you do.
Well, I've got 4 to 6 years left, and then I'm just kicking back and saying there are enough youngsters out there over at the Ruthless Podcast and Scott Jennings. I want to begin with some bio. Tell us who you are and who you root for.
Absolutely. I'm a Kentuckian. I was born in Dawson Springs, Kentucky in 1977 and started my political career working for George W. Bush's campaign in 2000 and have been in politics and in the space ever since. I've actually been with Mitch McConnell since his 1996 election when I licked envelopes in an office in Kentucky, and he's really been my mentor, truthfully. I've been with CNN for 7.5 years. And this is the first presidential cycle at CNN that I've been there where we've really been out and about. You know, the 20 cycle, we were all stuck in our houses and it took a back seat in some ways to the COVID coverage. But that's my job in the media right now is I write occasional columns for the LA Times and for the Daily Mail. But I take up my perch at CNN as the resident conservative and contrarian and try to give half the country a defense of how they're thinking and feeling about this world we live in.
I like to tell people you're a common sense conservative, and I knew that you had a McConnell tie. I'd like to go back through the political biography because I believe the McConnell people are the best communicators. All the Ruthless podcasts, or 3 out of 4, are McConnellists. I am a great admirer of the leader. I think The Long Game is the most important political memoir ever written. But what did you do for the leader?
Well, I started out as a young political volunteer in '96 when I was a freshman in college. But then in 2002, I was his political director and communications guy for his campaign. In 2008, I was a senior advisor to his very difficult reelection campaign. And then in 2014, I ran the independent expenditure arm of the campaign, which was new then. And then in 2020, I advised him informally as he was coasting to re-election in Kentucky. And over the years, he and I have just had such a great bond. I was also a McConnell scholar at the University of Louisville. He has this amazing scholarship program for 10 Kentucky kids a year. And I'm the son of a garbage man. I didn't really have anything. And that he plucked me, and the program plucked me out of obscurity and really nothing and gave me a chance to go to the University of Louisville and get a college education. I'll never forget. I was with him and Elaine Chao last night in New York City. I interviewed them for a big award they won at the Hudson Institute. And he was in rare form last night and talking about his view on the world and what he's going to do for the next 2 years after he's finished being leader. And He was as spry and funny and locked in on the issues of the day as ever. So he's been my mentor.
You know,
I wouldn't
Scott,
be here.
you may not have heard me say this, but for many years I have said Mitch McConnell is the single best legislative leader the Republicans have enjoyed in my lifetime. I'm 68 years old. I go back a long way. I worked for Nixon in his exile in San Clemente. I worked on the Ford 1976 campaign. So I have a long memory for Republican legislators. Leader McConnell is the most effective. I'm not sure I'd want to succeed him. Do you think anyone really wants that job? I know the two Johns want that job, but my goodness, it's going to be hard to be as good at it as Leader McConnell's been at it.
Yeah, I agree, both on the legislative front and on the political front. When you consider what he does for the party in terms of fundraising, candidate recruitment, clear-eyed strategic guidance, for a lot of these campaigns, I tell people this all the time. We're going to miss him when he's gone. We're going to miss him for a long time because all the roles he plays for the party, he's been so vital, not just in Kentucky, where he has turned the state totally red, but nationally. He's our best strategist, both in the chamber and in the political campaign world, in my opinion.
He also saved the Constitution, and that is what I really genuinely admire with his no hearings, no votes in the aftermath of the untimely death of Justice Scalia. Not only did he get Donald Trump elected by making that an issue, he kept the court on its originalist course and all of his appointees that he shepherded through the Senate. Now, enough about Leader McConnell. Scott, you mentioned you're the son of a garbage man. So is Tim Russert. Tim Russert's memoir, Big Tim, and what was his dad's name? Was it Big Tim and Little Tim? I can't remember, but his dad was a garbage man, and he became very savvy as a result of that. You learn a lot from a dad who collects trash. Tell me about your father.
Well, my dad was a blue-collar guy. For many years, he was one of the people who managed what, we didn't even have garbage pickup. So he had to manage the installation where you took the garbage. That's how rural it was where I grew up. He also worked in factories and was a union guy at times. He was the biggest Bill Clinton guy I knew. Big Democrat.
Huh.
My grandfather was a Democrat. And now he's the biggest Trump guy I know. He was the first person to call me and tell me Donald Trump's going to be the next president of the United States. And of course, me being, from the wing of the party I'm in, I was like, oh, Dad, come on, give me a break. But he knew first. All those Democrats from the 90s, all those blue collar guys, they're Republicans now. And, I think about my relationship with my dad. He was like the leading indicator of it. And I didn't even know it at the time. But his journey through life and our relationship means a lot to me. And as he's
maybe there's a book in there. Russert's book was Big Tim and Little Russ, because he was Big Tim and Little Russ, and that's what the name of the book is. Now, Scott, what did you do for W, who I admire more than any president? I worked very closely with Nixon. I worked in the Reagan White House. I voted twice for Trump and will vote for Trump again. I get along fine with him. But the best man to be president in my lifetime, and just in terms of the soul and the fiber, is George W. Bush in my assessment. What did you do for W?
In 2000, I was the campaign guy for Kentucky. Back in those days, Kentucky was still a swing state. Bill Clinton had won it twice. But then in 2004, they sent me to New Mexico, and I was his campaign director in New Mexico, which we won. He had lost it in 2000. And then after that, I went to the White House and was special assistant to the president. I worked in the political affairs office for Karl Rove. And had mostly a great experience. We did have a run-in with some Democrats after the 06 midterms. But that was my job. I was a political guy, helping on the campaign side and then getting, honestly, the opportunity of a lifetime to work in the White House, worked on the Supreme Court.
Well, now I can yell at you. I've yelled at Rove about this. Carl taught me to be a field school. I went to field school with Carl in 1974. He was running the college Republicans, and he came to campus. He also then went across the country and taught field school to my wife, and we met at a Pete Wilson fundraiser. So I thank Karl Rove for a lot of things. But deciding to try and reform Social Security in 2005 after the election of 2004 was the biggest political mistake of my lifetime. Do you regret that?
Well, I certainly was in the middle of it. I mean, it didn't turn out well for us. I mean, we went all over the country. You might remember Bush had this massive travel schedule. We were going all over the country. Republicans were a little nervous about getting involved in it, but he really believed in it and really tried it. And then, of course, all that got upended by other world and domestic events in the fall of 2005. And it was a slog that we never quite made through to the other side.
2005 may be the worst political year for any person I've ever watched. We had the young lady dying in Florida, and the Republicans passed a law to try and save her life, and that didn't go over well. Then we had Katrina. Then we had Iraq go south. It was just a disaster. It must have been a nightmare to be in the political operation. So, Scott, how did CNN find you? I got offered a job by Jeff and turned him down because I just didn't want to work at CNN. I went to work for NBC instead. How did CNN find you, and did you have reservations?
Well, they found me in 2017. A producer called me. I had done some work on Fox, mostly for Britt Hume in the 2016 cycle, but in an unpaid capacity. And a producer called me in 2017, asked me to come up and do a few shows. I was not under any obligation to say no, so I did it. And within a few weeks, they offered me a contributorship, and I've been there ever since. And it's been honestly a great job. I love CNN. They treat me well. They're pretty committed to political debate right now, which is what I really believe in. I think we need a fair hearing for both sides of this country. I don't think you're getting that at a lot of the other media outlets right now. And so they let me do my thing. And, we've certainly been through a lot of iterations of the network. But right now, when you look at what they're doing and letting a conservative voice and conservative voices go on the air and make the case and defend half the country's views, I think CNN ought to be commended for what they're doing and bringing actual debate and conversation to the airwaves right now.
Well, you are getting a lot more time than any other conservative I've ever seen get time on CNN, so that's good. Scott, it is my rule, and maybe you practice this as well, never to speak ill of anyone with whom you've worked, no matter how mad you are at them. And so I'm not going to trash any of your colleagues at CNN because I get along with Dana and with Jake. Mark Preston and I were buddies. Mark almost got me smoking again, though. He is a chimney, and he's a New England fan, and he's a Boston Red Sox fan. So there's everything that could possibly be wrong with Mark is wrong. But I love all the people over there. But you're the only one. I mean, name for me any other conservative who's on the air as much as you are.
Well, we have a few other voices. There's a fellow named David Urban who is on as well.
Oh, David, you're right.
Yeah, and knows a lot about Pennsylvania politics. And we have a very young guy named Michael Singleton who's on sometimes, who does a nice job. For better or worse, I've taken up my slot at the end of the desk on most nights as the resident contrarian, and it's been a great gig, honestly. And my family of Axelrod and Van Jones and the rest, we really have forged this amazing bond, and I think it's led to some pretty interesting moments on the air.
Well, you just mentioned the smartest leftist out there, Van Jones. There are some very smart leftists on CNN, and there are some hosts who are pretty fair, like Dana and Jake. But you weren't there in the Lemon era, and Don and I used to fight on the air. That's not a secret, because I just thought he was unfair to people. Have you run into any of that where someone is unfair?
No, I wouldn't call it unfair. You certainly run into panels where you feel like, you didn't get your full, you wanted to make one more argument about something. And I was on the air a lot with Don Lemon too. I cut my teeth a lot on those 11:35 p.m. panels with Don late in the night, talking about goodness knows what. But no, I like I said, I feel treated very well. I mean, they don't censor me. No one tells me what to say. Nobody, tries to, steer me in one direction or the other. They've only ever told me just to give my authentic opinion based on my values and experience. And I've tried to live up to that. So no, I feel like it all goes pretty well, and I know my role and they know what their role is. And I think we all have a fair understanding of how it works.
No one ever told me what to do on any network. I mostly worked for NBC. I never took a dime from CNN, but I never worked for anyone but NBC, and no one ever told me what not to say. However, have you ever been on a panel that was 3-1 conservative to liberal? Ever in your entire life? Have you ever had two other conservatives against one liberal?
No, I don't remember any panels like that. They have had panels where they put a couple of conservatives on, just conservatives with no dissenting opinion, to talk about something going on in the Republican Party. But no, I don't really recall it being set up that way.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. Now, do they ever ask you for programming advice? They never asked me for programming advice. I always gave it to them. But have they ever asked you?
You know, they do ask me and talk to me about what the segments are going to be on the shows that I'm going to be on. And this Abby Phillips show, which is at 10 o'clock at night, does something kind of miraculous. They give each panelist 30 seconds at the end of the show to give a hot take of the day. And I turn it in, and they let me have 30 free seconds to do my thing,
Yeah.
which is the first time that's ever happened. And so
This is the difference
it's pretty
between being a
well
young
here.
man and an older man. Abby has invited me up to New York repeatedly, and I won't go because I just don't need to go to New York anymore at 68 and for 30 seconds and a 10 o'clock show or an 11 o'clock show. But she's pretty smart. Is she fair?
She's been very fair to me. I love Abby, and I think what she's doing with this show, putting people in a roundtable setting in the heat of this election, it's been a great revelation, I think, for the network. The show is terrific. She's fair to me and gives me a totally a fair hearing, and we joust a little bit about things, but I think Abby's doing a terrific job. It's been a breakout thing for me. This has been one of the most fun shows I've done in 7 years.
You have broken out. Scott, have they offered you your own show?
No. I'm a senior political contributor. I show up when they ask me to do for all the shows, but no, never been offered that.
If they offered you your own show, would you do it?
Oh, 100%. I absolutely. I mean, I think half the country needs more conservative speech and more conservative content. I think so, of course, and I think the CNN audience would like it. I mean, look, I think there are conversations to be had that are being had all over this country that just aren't being fully represented in most media. And the more we can represent that, I think the better off we'd be as a country. And so 100% would do it.
So you're a free market guy. I'm a free market guy. I do not understand why none of the major networks, the legacy networks, and I included CNN in that, have one conservative host. Just one. We got lots of left-wingers. And Margaret Brennan is my favorite punching bag right now because of the disastrous debate that she hosted between on the vice presidential debate. But my question to you is, why don't you think the networks have one conservative host between them? Just one, anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a little above my pay grade to know the vagaries of television production decision making. But I will say this for the network that I work for, not knowing how they make those decisions, but knowing the decisions they've made to feature conservative voices in this cycle and to let people over the years give a viewpoint for half the country. I do think that is good, and I think they are the one network actually committed to doing that. I don't really think you're getting these kinds of debates at the other places. So just to speak up.
No, I left NBC because they weren't having those debates. They promised them Andy Locke left, and then it ended. And ABC's gone over a cliff. CBS has gone over a cliff. So I'm glad to see you out there. Are you amazed at how many people retweet your posts?
Yeah, it's been kind of amazing actually to see these clips going viral. But I think it's a testament to the product that CNN is making, that people want to watch it. And I mean, I get messages all the time saying, I don't watch CNN, but I will now. And I think that's a good thing. But it is kind of incredible that all these moments have been created that people have really latched onto in this cycle. And I'm proud to do it because I think half the country needs a representative. And I'm trying to deliver that every day, an authentic representation of what the average conservative is thinking. There's obviously a marketplace for it. People are responding to it.
And you are unafraid. I like that. Fair and unafraid. Now, Scott, in terms of the McConnell gang that's out there, I'm sure you listen to Ruthless Podcast. Do you think podcasting is going to destroy broadcast?
As an old radio guy, my first job ever as a teenager was as a radio guy back in rural Western Kentucky. And I was a news anchor on WHAS radio in Louisville, Kentucky for when I was in college. So I'm a huge radio guy and a proponent for radio. No, I don't think it's going to destroy it because I think there's always going to be a place in America for live radio and for what people like you do and for what radio does in local communities. My job was in a community radio, and I just know the impact of it on communities. I still think it exists. I don't think podcasts can meet that live demand, that instant demand. So no, I think radio is going to be with us. It may take different forms, but I think it's so unique that it's irreplaceable.
No, we disagree. I think podcasting is going to chew up broadcasting and spit it out because you find smart guys like Holmes and Ashbrook and Duncan and Smug, and you put them together and you get more content and you actually get expertise like you have because you come out of the world of politics. Most journalists don't. How do you stay abreast of the news, Scott? How do you keep up with what's going on?
Yep, I've cultivated a pretty diverse feed using X, truthfully, as my principal go-to source. But in terms of newspapers, I read the Wall Street Journal cover to cover every single day. And then I read the New York Times, as much as it pains me to say it out loud every single day. And then I just have a whole flood of things that I've curated that I keep up with. I also watch a lot of video, honestly, especially in the presidential election. I watch a lot of the Trump stuff. I watch a lot of Harris, and I just try to watch them directly and how they're presenting things. And I'm doing it mostly so I can predict what's going to happen on TV that night. But there's a lot of reading that gets done by me every day, and I keep up with it throughout the day because you never know when something's going to break and you're going to have to pop on the air and comment on it.
So, two last questions. What do you think's going to happen when the voting closes on November 5 and we get the results?
Gosh, I've been saying the same thing for 18 months. I have no idea who's going to win. I think Trump is very close, but I don't think he's over the hump, and I don't think she is either. If I were either of them, I wouldn't be too confident right now because I don't think either of them have it in the bag. But it's true. He's more popular than he's ever been. His administration is retroactively more popular than it's ever been. She is a disaster every time she opens her mouth in an open media setting, and she's apparently committed to continuing to do that. So I think he's right on the cusp of winning, and she's got real problems. But Hugh, truthfully, I'm not sure. I usually have a pretty good instinct for these things. I'm conflicted on this one. I don't know how you feel, but I'm a little conflicted.
I don't know. After 2016, I don't make predictions. Last thing I want to talk to you about. In the spring, CNN and Salem, and I work for Salem, we jointly presented to the RNC to do debates. And I thought Ronna McDaniel and Bossie were going to give us 4 debates like we had in 2015, 2016, because Salem CNN is a pretty good combination. And I got to know Chris Licht a little bit, and I was looking forward to suggesting to him, not for me, I'm too old for this, but for someone like you, the return of Crossfire. Chris got blown out, obviously, in the unfortunate Atlantic expose, which never talked to the Atlantic ever. But I want Crossfire back. I want it back with young people who know what they're talking about. Do you think they'll ever go back to that? Jon Stewart blew it up, and that's on him. But it was unfortunate because Crossfire did a lot of good for America when it was done well. Do you think it will ever come back?
I don't know if it'll come back with that branding, and again, that's above my pay grade. But I will tell you this: if you're not watching it, this 10 o'clock show with Abby Phillip might be the closest thing that we have to that right now. I've had a few people suggest to me that it reminds them and gives them the same feeling they got that they got on Crossfire. So if you want to check out something that's perhaps comparable, the 10 o'clock show with Abby might be what you're looking for. So great question. I grew up watching that too and loved it and loved the format and loved the people and the way the show was handled. So I'm in the boat with you. I love Crossfire, and honestly, doing the 10 o'clock has given me the feeling that I imagine it was like to be on that show.
Do they ever allow 2 conservatives on the Abby show?
Yeah, we often have 2 conservatives actually. Sometimes it's a journalist and or someone from a different background than me. But yes, they often have 2 on there, and then they'll have 2 Democrats, and then there's usually a 5th chair that's sometimes a journalist, sometimes somebody from culture. It varies. But yeah, they actually have it's pretty balanced most nights, and I think that's a good commitment.
Well, then maybe I will say yes to them on the condition that we do it for 5 nights in a row and that you are there. I would just be a guest. I don't like to go to New York too often, but if you were there and Abby's that good and they're trying to do Crossfire, maybe I'll say yes. Because, Scott, you're awfully good at this. Congratulations. The only thing I've got to ask you, do not go into radio for the next 6 to 8 years. For as long as I hang around doing this, I don't want you in radio.
I totally understand. I'm more than happy to be on your show. And by the way, if you come to New York and sit across from me at the table, that will be a dream come true to be on TV with Hugh Hewitt. Are you kidding me? That would be like getting to be on TV with a legend and somebody you've looked up to.
I'll bring a baton along because I don't know anyone else who's been as willing to be a punching bag as me other than you. Scott Jennings of CNN, thank you for joining us. Follow Scott on X at Scott Jennings KY. Follow me to the next segment, America. Rick Scott is a great senator. The state of Florida has had a great deal of trouble in the last couple of weeks because of Hurricane Milton. First, before we talk about your campaign, Senator, I know you want to talk about hurricane recovery efforts. How's it going?
It's tough. Your heart goes out to these people. They, one, we got a lot of storm surge, and we didn't just get it here. We got it in Ian 2 years ago. Then we got it with Helene a couple weeks ago. Then we got it with Milton. So that hurt a lot of people. Then we got a lot of flooding. We got a lot of wind. So there are a lot of people in these manufactured homes that got hurt. So it's all hands on deck to help these people, and the insurance companies have to do their job. The local, state, and federal government's got to do their job. So I'm talking to FEMA every day. And they make sure they're going to do their job. I know the SBA, who does a loan program, they're out of money. So I've talked to the White House about this. President Biden agrees with me. We need to come back and make sure that the agencies that do disaster relief, they ought to, not just for Florida, but for Helene hit Georgia and East Tennessee and North Carolina, and we ought to come back and make sure these things are funded. It's pretty basic. If the federal government makes a commitment to you, they ought to do their job.
Senator Scott, we have been running a campaign with Food for the Poor for the past couple of days to try and get donations for Florida and North Carolina, especially the mountains region. Has Florida run out of need? Have they been fixed, or do people still need to send money to Florida?
Oh, gosh. There's a lot of need. If you go along the coast, a lot of these, everywhere from, some in Naples, but not as much, but Fort Myers Beach up to all of Pinellas County, along there, these homes got hurt. And then there's so many people lost their homes with this wind, with these manufactured homes. And this flooding just came up. So, there's so many people. Your heart goes out to them. It seems like the poorest families get hurt the most, always. But yeah, there's a lot of people hurting. You feel
all right. We will continue to keep sending people to Food for the Poor. Then the banners at HughHewitt.com. Senator, I want to turn to politics.
Thanks for doing that.
There is always an effort to knock off you and Ted Cruz. You always turn them back, but they always spend $1 billion trying to get you and Cruz out. How's that feel in Florida this year?
Well, they're spending money. The Democrat Senate Committee came in yesterday with a big ad buy. So, they're, historically, like Chuck Schumer has always been out to try to get me. He did it in 2018, and when I beat Bill Nelson, and he's doing it this time. And the Democrat Senate Committee is helping my opponent. So, what you do, if you do what you do every day, you go out and you try to raise money. And yesterday I visited a senior center down in the Miami area, did a veterans event, did a faith-based leaders event. And so you travel every day and you just go get your votes out. So you can vote in Florida. You can already vote absentee ballot. Early voting starts on Monday. And then you can vote on election day. The smartest thing is to get your vote in as early as possible. Bank your vote, because you don't know what will happen on election day. So that's what we're working hard to do. So I hope everybody will get out there and help us. You can go to rickscott.com to support our campaign or volunteer. You can just get the vote out. We need all the votes. We need everybody to vote for us. We need everybody to get their family and friends to vote for us. We need to swamp them with votes.
The campaign website is rickscott.com. I always appreciate it when someone has an easy name to remember, an easy name to spell, and they make it your campaign website. Small dollar donations matter a lot, Senator. I don't know how many media markets you've got in the Sunshine State, but I'm on in about 5 of them, and I still don't cover the state.
No, we've got 9 media markets, but you do a great job. You've got a big following in Florida. People appreciate your program, and they appreciate all the information you put out.
So do small dollar donors matter to someone like you locked in one of these multi-million-dollar campaigns?
Absolutely. Number one, the money adds up. Number two, when people donate, they get active. So they get more active at trying to make sure their friends and their family go out and vote. So small dollar donations matter 2 ways. The money adds up, but it also adds up in the votes.
Now, Governor, I call you Governor. You were governor before you were senator. Senator Scott, When you walk into a room and it's about FEMA or it's about any other a small business administration that's out of money, do they listen to you because you were the governor for 8 years and you went through a lot of storms, or do they just fall into their partisan corners?
Well, I've met with Biden twice, with Helene, and this one I met with him over the weekend. The days run together when you're campaigning and trying to take care of a hurricane. He completely agrees with me, and then he called me last Thursday, completely agreeing with me. But, Chuck Schumer is not doing anything. Didn't hit New York, so he didn't care. I meant when Hurricane Sandy hit New York, he was out there pounding the pavement that we got to get funding, but didn't hit New York, and he doesn't want to help me. It's all partisan in his case. But there's other good people that want to help. So we just gotta tell our story and talk about the people that need the help. The SBA had told me from day one they didn't have any money. They came out, I think, yesterday and explained that they have no money for these loan programs. They have loan programs for people to rebuild their homes or rebuild their businesses. They have $0 right now. But
I got to talk about the SBA for a moment. Kamala Harris brought out her campaign for Black Americans yesterday, which is a horrible premise to begin with. But her first point is she's going to direct the SBA to give Black Americans special treatment. Isn't that as unconstitutional as the day is long?
I think that's called racism.
Yeah.
So it's no ifs, ands, buts about it. That's racism. What we ought to do is, I want everybody. What I tell people in my state is, look, I'm blessed. I might have grown up broke, lived in public housing, born to a single mom, but I'm blessed because I live in this country. I don't care. I don't care the color of your skin, where you started. You ought to have a chance to live the dream. That's my job. Make sure you have a shot to live the dream. That's why I campaign. That's why I run. That's what I believe in. It's better for everybody in this country.
So I want to close by talking about the Senate. They know they've lost West Virginia and Montana. They know that. Everybody knows that. So they're trying to pick off you or Ted Cruz or, oddly enough, Deb Fischer. They're running an independent who's a left-wing nut who's trying to pretend he's, an independent who's a genuine independent. Are you worried about losing control of the Senate that will be picked up? I think, by the way, McCormick and Marino and Hovde are going to win as well. Are you worried about the Senate at all?
Absolutely. You worry every day because you got to get people to vote. I mean, what surprises you is that the importance of these elections. Everybody knows it, but it's work to get people to go vote. I mean, I worry because it ultimately comes down to, are people going to take the time? Because it takes time. Are they going to take the time out of their day, their busy day, because they got a lot of stuff going on, to go vote? If they don't, we lose. And if they vote, we win. If you look at, people don't believe in what the Democrats are trying to sell us. But if we don't go get our votes out, yeah, you're going to lose. But look, Ted's working as hard. Deb Fischer is. We have so many opportunities to pick up with Dave McCormick and Bernie Moreno and Tim Sheehy, and we got Carrie Lake and Sam Brown and Mike Rogers and Eric Hovde. We got so many places.
Nella Domenici, Hung Cao. We got a great list of candidates.
Yeah,
let me close about voting in Florida. I am worried about the mountains of North Carolina not being able to vote. Are there parts of Florida that aren't going to be able to vote because of Milton?
Well, if you remember, in 2018, I had a hurricane 3 weeks before my campaign. We probably lost 25,000 votes. Just because, people lost their homes, they're focused on something else. So, yeah, and think about it, the west coast of Florida is where I do really well. And so I'm absolutely concerned about it. So it costs us money, but we're putting in a lot of effort to get people to vote. We do have good supervisor elections that are going to try to make it easy, where people can find where they're supposed to vote. But a lot of the precincts are under, they were demolished. So it's going to be a lot of work to make sure we win.
All right, to my friends who are listening in Tampa and Sarasota, get out there and vote. Ditto in Orlando and Jacksonville and the Panhandle, everywhere. I'm not on in Miami. That is a unique market. I'm not on in Miami, so you're on your own there, Senator. But we'll keep telling everyone to get out and vote early. Bank it, make a plan, get it done. Rick Scott, always a pleasure to talk to you, Senator. Good luck. Keep pushing. Keep working.
We will. See you, Hugh. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. I want to go now to Charlemagne the God. I've been meaning to do this. First of all, Donald Trump released a new ad yesterday. Let's play that. Cut number 10.
Flood of illegals, skyrocketing prices, global chaos, and Kamala wouldn't change a thing.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Nothing will change with Kamala. More weakness, more war, more welfare for illegals, and even more taxes. Only President Trump cut middle-class taxes, and only President Trump will do it again.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
It's a great ad. It's a great ad. It's a great ad. Now, Kamala is going to sit down with Brett Baer tonight at 5. It will air at 6. It will be unedited. It's live to tape. I see a lot of conspiracy nuts saying it's going to be Brett's a good journalist. I have no idea if he's a Republican or a Democrat. He's just a good old-fashioned journalist. Watch it and listen. She was on Charlemagne the God, The Breakfast Club yesterday, and here is cut number 12.
So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother, worked hard, raised me.
All right, stop right there. Whenever I hear middle class, I stop. I want you to understand reparations based on race are unconstitutional. Reparations based upon race are unconstitutional. Doesn't need to be studied. It is unconstitutional. Here's the longer version of that, cut number 13.
My question to you is, what's your stance on reparations? We all know that America became great, off the backs of free black labor. How progressive are you on making it a priority and righting America's wrongs? It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century, with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative?
Kamala Harris goes on Charlemagne the God because black men are deserting her and some black women. And they're going to Donald Trump because they would like a job and they would like the border to be secured. So a caller calls up and asks her about reparations, has a long wind-up. Here's her answer.
Thank you, Zeke.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So to your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position.
Right, stop. She has not been very clear about that. It doesn't need to be studied. It's unconstitutional. It is absolutely unconstitutional. The whole idea of reparations is repugnant to most Americans, and indeed, I believe, a majority of black Americans, because it has no connection to most Americans whatsoever. There are a few descendants of slave owners in the United States, I'm sure. They ain't me, babe. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt's family got here in 1848. The Hewitts arrived 20 years later in 1868. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt's great-great-great-grandfather, a refugee of Austria. He was Jewish, led the Revolutionary Empire effort there, fled with his father to Indianapolis, opened a synagogue, became a lawyer, and then rose to the rank of Brigadier General. Frederick Knepfler, fighting to free the slaves. Got nothing to do with slavery. James Hewitt came to this country in 1868, went from Ellis Island to a coal mine in Pennsylvania. It's got nothing to do with slavery. It's absurd. It's stupid. And she should have said that, but she's afraid of losing even 1% of a population, even though it is wildly unconstitutional. Now, any discrimination against people based upon race, gender, ethnicity, or religious belief is illegal under the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment. Wherever it exists, it ought to be struck down and individual remedies can and should be fashioned to recompense those who have felt that. But that is not what she said. I really do not understand how any lawyer in the United States can give that answer.